This is Chicago's Morning Answer
That's enough. Put down the mic.
on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Is this still raining?
Yeah, it's pouring out. So a lot of us, this is what it sounds like.
It's great
Yeah.
sound effects. You're like,
Do you like it?
Yeah. Michael Winslow from Police Academy is very impressive.
There it is.
Yeah. Wow, that's even better. All right. Hopefully that clears by noon. I got a golf game.
Do you have a tea time?
Yeah, that's right. All right, this is one of the more comprehensive pieces on the topic that I've read. Jane Robbins, writing at thepublicdiscourse.com. She's a senior fellow at the American Principles Project and an attorney. She's also the co-author of the book, Deconstructing the Administrative State, The Fight for Liberty. And she writes of the cracks in the edifice of transgender totalitarianism. It's the optimism reminds me of our discussion with Ryan T. Anderson a year or so ago when his book came out, saying that the transgender movement, it's just going to fall under its own weight. And I was a little skeptical then, and I'm even more skeptical now. So I'm looking for rays of hope, and perhaps Miss Robbins can give us those. She joins us now. Jane Robbins, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I read the piece. Let's just start with the headline, The Cracks in the Edifice of Transgender Totalitarianism. This comes after another couple of professionals and academics have been sacked in the last week. University of Louisville, a psychologist noted, as well as a doctor in the UK who refused to refer to patients by their preferred pronouns. So how was this cracking under its own weight?
Well, you're absolutely right that it looks bleak. There are so many things happening out there. The totalitarianism has certainly clamped down. But as I talk about in the piece, the more these things happen and they affect more people who thought, well, I don't have to worry about this. This isn't going to affect me. We see people starting to fight back. We see lawsuits now being filed about by people who have lost their jobs or whatever because of the transgender totalitarianism. We see more and more doctors beginning to speak out, and this was something that a year ago really wasn't happening, other than a few just very intrepid doctors, some of whom were already retired or semi-retired, and so they said there's nothing they can do to me. We see actually people on the other side of the political spectrum starting to say, wait, this is ridiculous. Even radical feminists, some of them are complaining about it. Martina Navratilova is complaining about it.
Let me just sorry to interrupt, but let me just stop you there, because the Martina Navratilova is interesting. And I wonder if you think, and so is the litigation, which you referenced, and they're both sort of in the same topic area, which is athletics. And I wonder if you think that protecting girls' athletics, even more so, incredibly to me, but it seems to be the case, even more so than protecting girls in the bathroom or the locker room, girls in sports seems to be a real problem for the cult.
I think so. I think it is a big problem because Navratilova refers to these people as bullies and says that they are that this is cheating to let biological boys compete against girls. And I think people understand that at a gut level. Plus, unlike some of the other areas, when you're talking about having girls being defeated by boys in high school sports, you're talking about dollars here. These girls might lose scholarships. So that does hit people, and there's a basic sense of unfairness, I think, there. So I think that is one of the areas in which we may begin to see more backlash. I know there are girls now in Connecticut who have filed complaints about it because they're routinely being defeated by boys in track meets.
Right, and then just last week, another transgender weightlifter, a 41-year-old man named Gavin, who transitioned in his 30s, he went to events during weightlifting competitions.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
I don't
And
know how it's, without litigation, I can't see how this is going to end.
well, there's going to have to be litigation, and that is starting. Another way that there is litigation, another area of litigation that's going on, is that some psychotherapists, mental health professionals, are suing over state laws that are being implemented to ban so-called conversion therapy, meaning that psychotherapists would be forbidden to explore the psychological reasons that people think that they're the wrong sex. There are lawsuits. There's one in Florida. There's one in New York City. An Orthodox Jewish psychotherapist in New York City has sued on First Amendment grounds. And those, I think, have a real good shot at prevailing. So there are people now who are starting to fight back about it. And, of course, there's safety in numbers. No one wants to be the only doctor west of the Mississippi who is complaining about this. But when there are more and more that are starting to speak out about it, at least it gives me hope. It's going to be a long, hard slog, but I do have some hope that at some point reality will prevail.
Let's talk more globally about the point of this movement, like the point of the redefinition of marriage movement, and it just sort of flows from there. You mentioned this movement, cult, has bulldozed the ancient fundamental rights of parents, and this is where we have to get to in terms of, I think, educating people, enlightening people, because otherwise people are sort of the, hey, whatever my next door neighbor wants to do with his kid or his kid wants to do in terms of their gender identity. What's it to me? You want to use this pronoun? Whatever. What's it to me? It's sort of the not my business argument that seems persuasive, as was with the redefinition of marriage. And so you have to get to the dot connecting of where this leads and how it's going to impact those people who think it's none of my business.
That's exactly right. We were told over and over again when the Obergefell decision came down that same-sex marriage would not affect anybody else. What possible difference could it make to you if two men want to get married or two women want to get married? Well, what is happening is, and what has happened, obviously, is that once you decide that sex does not matter, and if it doesn't matter for marriage, it doesn't matter for anything, then it's a very short step to saying, well, sex is completely arbitrary. You can just choose your sex. And then it's a short step from that to saying, well, I have the right to choose my sex, and if you disagree with me, then I have the right to shut you down. And I have the right to, in the schools, teach your children to adopt my way of thinking because your way of thinking is bigoted. So it has been a very few years since Obergefell, and here we are with everyone being told that they cannot even say the wrong word because if they do, they're being bigoted, they're engaging in discriminatory behavior. So where this goes with parents, when parents start losing their rights over their children, and it has happened that some parents, it hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened, that parents are being, the custody of their child is being removed from them and given to somebody who will let the child engage in the harmful behavior. That is why we have to worry about the fundamental redefinition of reality.
I just don't think that. I mean, there's a lot of girls growing up who are tomboys who didn't want to wear dresses, who wanted to play sports, wanted to hang with the boys. And I feel like the parents now and the school system is pushing them, saying, oh, maybe you really are a boy, instead of just kind of exploring.
That's exactly what's happening. And it's starting very, very young. It's starting in kindergarten with children being asked, are you really a girl or are you really a boy? Or you might want to change. Now, there is nothing more fundamental to a child's identity than what sex he is. And when you start injecting doubt into that, well, I thought I was a girl, maybe I'm not. That absolutely is child abuse, and that destabilizes a child's entire identity. And that is what is happening in the schools, especially if you've got schools that are engaging in so-called comprehensive sex education. It's taking these concepts and teaching it to children as soon as they are old enough to walk through the door. And it doesn't matter what the parents say. If the parents disagree, the parents are bigots.
Right. I mean, we had a parent on, a woman on, who's filed a complaint in Canada against the school system for doing exactly that with her grammar school daughter and creating the doubt that you're describing. That's exactly right. But then, the flip side is, of course, you're up against all of the cultural mavens that have the biggest blowtorches. So that's up against celebrating whatever prepubescent drag queens on Good Morning America, for goodness sakes, and drowning out anybody who would provide cognitive dissonance, even if they have actually had the experience, like Walt Heyer or Jamie Shoup, who we've had on the show. And other medical professionals that you suggested now, because they're retired or whatever, have the ability to speak out.
Well, that's right, and there are some parent groups out there that are starting to fight back on them. One of them is called Fourth Wave Now. The other is called the Kelsey Coalition, and I encourage people who may be dealing with this in their family or in their schools to go there and to their websites and take a look and see that they are not alone, that there are efforts being made to take back some of the authority. But as far as the drag queens and all of that kind of thing, yes, I mean, I have actually attended a drag queen story hour here in Atlanta, and it is just, I wonder when they're going to start having porn star story hour, because these people have an interesting perspective too. Why don't we let them come in and read to children? But the goal is the early sexualization of children. You break down every inhibition. You introduce them to concepts that they otherwise would never think of in a million years, and you get them to believe that this is all normal. This is what normal people do. It's a way of grooming children. So a lot of the people behind this movement are just misguided. A lot of them are really bad people with a bad agenda.
Yeah. I mean, it's brainwashing, because at that age, I remember I just wanted to do finger painting and go play. I didn't want to hear about sex. I didn't know what it was even. I mean, nobody needs to hear about it at that age.
Yeah,
Of course not. It's completely inappropriate.
And it's right. And so we're schizophrenic on the topic too. Where everybody gets on their moral high horse when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and his predatory behavior, and rightly so, sexualizing young girls. And then we turn around and we're sexualizing girls even younger than that, and boys even younger than that too. I mean, and allowing people who do have agendas. I mean, I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming, and you have so many people just dismiss this as right-wing Christian conspiracy theory. Go back and read William Reich. William Reich, a member of the Frankfurt School, he saw sex education in schools as the best way to divest parents of their moral authority. That is the language he used, and that's exactly what they're doing.
That's exactly right. He understood that you have to break down the family, you have to break down the church or any religious values, because otherwise the state cannot take over. And when you break down the family, what you're left with is the state. And you even get so-called conservative politicians who just consider themselves pragmatists, who say, well, we have to step in here because the parents aren't doing their job or whatever. And so, of course, whenever the state comes in, the state is going to enforce its own values, and more those are not values that any of us are comfortable with.
She is Jane Robbins. She's a senior fellow at the American Principles Project. She's an attorney. Her book, Deconstructing the Administrative State, The Fight for Liberty, and her primer. It's a long piece, but this is really a good sort of resource on the topic. The Cracks in the Edifice of Transgender Totalitarianism at thepublicdiscourse.com, which I'll tweet out. Jane, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560.